In the race to the White House, Bernie Sanders is gaining some traction against Hillary Clinton. A new poll of New Hampshire voters shows he's within a dozen points. Yes, I know it's early, and yes, bear in mind that this is a state bordering his home state of Vermont. So, two questions to start off. Does Hillary have anything to worry about, and what should we make of this? I'll answer for you, Dominic. No and nothing. Mr. Mayor, should Hillary be concerned? And if so, what's the takeaway in those numbers for her?
I don't think she should be concerned, but at the same time, I don't think any candidate for any office should ever be complacent or project complacency. And to her credit and the credit of her campaign team, I think they've been very careful to avoid that impression. So she's working hard. She should work hard, and she should act as though she is in a competitive race, even if the reality is she's not.
Does that include engaging Bernie Sanders or calling him out on issues or taking him to task, which she has not yet done?
No, I don't think, at least at this stage, based on the dynamics we've seen up till now, I don't think there's any mileage in that whatsoever.
And Dominic, before I come back to you on this, I want to give you two other names just in all of this, and it's not from a terribly recent memory or history. Andrew Cuomo and Zephyr Teachout. Now, we said from the very beginning, as did I, while I said that Zephyr Teachout should be taken seriously, she was not going to be a significant challenge, and she wasn't in the long run. But she, to a certain degree, exposed a weakness of Andrew Cuomo, and you could make the argument that Cuomo hasn't recovered from the exposure of that weakness. He's not the same governor he was before that challenge.
I totally dismiss the notion of that argument. He had a little problem on the left that the press over-exaggerated, and every incumbent, just about history has shown, when they're reelected, their numbers, for the most part, start to go down. And that's exactly what happened to Mr. Cuomo. It's exactly what happened to Mr. Christie.
I would argue that he had a 33% weakness on his left flank as she got in the primary. But are there any lessons for Hillary Clinton from the Cuomo?
I don't think so, because even if you accept the premise of your question, there's no similar vulnerability on Hillary Clinton's left flank. There aren't any major interest groups in the progressive community that are opposed to her. She hasn't taken high-profile positions that are objectionable to progressives. I mean, there may be quibbling around the margins, as there would be about any candidate, but Hillary Clinton is, I think, ideologically and programmatically broadly acceptable to Democrats across the spectrum.
All right, so since I've been in the bullseye on this part of the segment, let's shift to something else where I think we can all agree and put somebody else in the scope. It's time for the Comb-Over Report. I'm so happy he's back in politics. Ever since announcing his campaign at Trump Tower on Tuesday, the Donald has been getting a lot of buzz and doing a lot of talking. Here are just some of his greatest hits.
The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. Mexico, lots of problems. Drugs, crime, rapists. I speak to border guards. The Middle East, Islamic terrorism, they become rich. I'm in competition with them. They just built a hotel. They took the oil. ISIS has the oil. I love the military, and I want to have the strongest military. Iran is now taking over Iraq. China has our jobs. Mexico has our jobs.
It's like a bad character on a political sitcom in a lot of ways.
That's what you and some others say. I don't buy into that.
Well, so what do you buy into, and what's his appeal?
Okay, well, you could say, pundits could say whatever they want. This guy is going to make it to be in the top 10 for the Republican debate.
Assuming he files.
And assuming he files, yes. I was making that assumption, and it's no guarantee, so you're correct. Because at the end of the day, and full disclosure, I have an interesting relationship, a personal relationship with Mr. Trump. So no, I just want to say that.
I just
want to go on the record because I don't want people to say, "Oh, he started one of his books praising you, so that's why you're so nice about him." And that is true, he did. But that's not why I'm not so nice about him. I think that he is in the Republican primary. Remember, right now they're battling for the nomination, and whether we like it or not, this guy is a player and maybe a major player in the Republican nomination.
Well, I think he'll be a major player in providing comic relief to the presidential race. You remember when Katie Couric interviewed Sarah Palin?
Yes.
And then shortly afterwards, Saturday Night Live did a parody in which basically they just read the transcript of the interview. When it is possible to do a parody by just doing a transcript, you know you're in trouble. And you could definitely do a parody of Donald Trump's press conference simply by reading it back.
Yes, you can.
It's a shame that they're on summer hiatus, and so we're not going to get to hear what SNL's take is.
That's a good point. That's a real good point, Mr. Mayor.
So what do you you think his appeal is? Is it just that he's so different from everybody else that he speaks his mind? Is it that, do you think some voters out there think, well, he's a success so he can make the country a success?
Well,
or is it like me, it's just watching a train wreck?
I mean, if you look at the polls, he's one of the most unpopular figures in America.
Yes.
I think that Dominic may be right in that there is some kernel of folks who, in a multi-candidate field, could be attracted to wherever the most outlandish and anti-establishment candidate may be. And, he kind of channels the Republican id in a way that maybe the other candidates don't. So he may be a player in a multi-candidate field, but he's not remotely someone who could be a competitive candidate for the nomination in the end.
There's also an element of him that is unguarded in his style. Most politicians, and certainly most presidential candidates, seem to equivocate and be very careful in their remarks to make sure they don't offend anybody.
Wait a minute, Mr. Whitman.
Trump doesn't seem to care.
Do you remember some of the Republican candidates from 4 years ago?
I do.
Pizza guy Herman Cain. I mean, what was the? What was the lady from the Congresswoman from Minnesota?
Michelle
again?
Bachmann.
Michelle Bachmann.
You've forgotten.
Hey, here today, gone tomorrow. Do you remember what some of these candidates had to say?
I do.
But
and perhaps they should have been more guarded.
But I think the difference is he's not really running for president.
Right.
He's engaged in an effort of self-promotion and ultimately translate into further business opportunities. He enjoys the limelight. I can't imagine he is delusive enough to believe he's actually going to end up in the White House. So he may as well say whatever's on his mind and be as outrageous as possible, and that enhances his niche appeal for a certain group.
He's never going to open up his books, and there are too many personal issues.
I tell you what, if he does win, we got to make that change on the $10 bill before he gets in office, or he'll put himself on the $10 bill and the 20 and the 50. And we're going to take a break. When we come back, Brian Williams is talking for the first time since his suspension from NBC News. We'll play you what he said and tell you why he could be the next Robert Downey Jr. if he's lucky. We'll explain that next.